right, so we are live on Facebook and on Instagram. So what does pregnancy and equal pay have to do with our small businesses? Hi y'all, thanks so much for joining me. In less than 15 minutes, I'll be sharing with you what pregnancy and equal pay have to do with our small businesses. Please like and share this video if you get value from it. I'm Dr. P. I'm a strategic business coach, and I've been a school psychologist for 10 years in K-12 schools in the U.S., and I've served on professional organization committees, and I teach in an online psychology graduate program at the master's level. So I really wanted to talk about this, and if you've been following me all week, I've been talking about employment-related laws, laws that relate to our small businesses. So in my first position as a school psychologist, right, I had this friend who became pregnant. I was so happy for her because this was a pregnancy that both she and her husband, they were waiting on, wanting for such a long time, right? But throughout her pregnancy, there was so much that I learned about all these laws related to being pregnant in the workplace. Seriously, I had no clue. Then I had another friend in another organization. Actually, there were two other friends, two other organizations, and they became pregnant right after starting their jobs. But they weren't granted family and medical leave because the organizations had told them that they weren't working there long enough. And I was like, what the hell? That can't be right. And I mean, there was, like I said, so much that I learned from my friends who have gone through pregnancies while working, right? So in that first job that I mentioned, I remember also learning about men and women in the same position, but getting different pay. And I remember asking questions about why on earth is that happening? Why is there different pay? You know what I was told? I was told that the difference in pay was because of the experiences and all this other stuff that they were bringing to the job. I was like, really? I don't know about that. I was like, okay, if that's what y'all say, I guess that's what it really is. But it still didn't sound right to me. So I was a little like, I don't know about that. So when I was doing my research for my doctoral program, I remember coming across a study that examined job satisfaction among college and university faculty. Within that study, they also looked at differences in pay. So remember how I was saying in that organization, I was told that the differences in pay was because of the different experiences that men and women brought to the table. Therefore, that justified the differences in pay. Guess what? In this study that I'm talking about, they actually looked at the experiences that both men and women brought to the positions that they had in colleges and universities as faculty. And I'm talking about faculty straight out of their own graduate programs, right? And they still found that there were differences in pay between men and women, with men getting paid more than women. So again, just thinking about, differences in experience was what I was first told is one of the reasons why you have these differences in pay. Don't get me wrong. Yes, there are a lot of factors that go into pay, but there are a lot of things that we need to also consider when we're looking at, assigning pay to our employees. So let me ask you this. When you started your business, you probably didn't think about pregnancy and equal pay, right? I mean, I get it. The idea for the business kind of hit you one day and you were like, yes, let me work on this, develop it, and then you launched your business. It was just you until you decided to bring on some employees, right? And you started to hire these employees. Then one of your employees became pregnant, or you had a female employee approach you and they were like, hey, there is this man in the job who's doing the same thing I'm doing, but our pay isn't equal. That we're doing the same work, but he's getting paid more than me. Then you probably sat back and was like, ooh, I kind of wish that I had actually put some thought into these type of things. Actually researched employment laws before I went down this path of hiring individuals to come on board, right? So these are things that you really need to be addressing. And it's not too late. Don't get me wrong. If you're currently in that situation, it's not too late for you to become aware and learn about the employment laws that relate to pregnancy in the workplace, that relate to employment, to equal pay among your employees, right? And if you are thinking about going down that path, like right now it might just be you, but you might be thinking of expanding to 9 employees, 15 employees, 30 employees. Right now is the time really for you to make sure you're including this information in your plan so that you can be prepared. And don't tell me that you ain't got to worry nothing about this because you're going to go through an employment agency. If you've been following me all week, I've said this. It don't matter if you're going through an employment agency. Guess what? When you have an employee who's going to file a complaint, who do you think they're going to file that complaint against? Are they going to file it against the employment agency, or are they filing that complaint against you, the employer? Really, think about that. So today, the two laws I want to share are the Pregnancy Discrimination Act and the Equal Pay Act. And I see that your designs has joined me on Instagram. Thank you so much for joining me. I think we may have chatted today. So the Pregnancy Discrimination Act and Equal Pay Act here in the U.S. Those are the two I want to end this week talking about, because I mentioned the others earlier this week, right? So the Pregnancy Discrimination Act of 1978 was amended to the Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So I did talk about the Civil Rights Act earlier this week. If you missed that live, you can go into my libraries on Facebook, Instagram, and even on YouTube, and you can catch those, because I talk about the Title VII and also Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 here in the U.S. and why those relate to our businesses as small business owners. So back to the Pregnancy Discrimination Act. According to the Pregnancy Discrimination Act, an employer is prohibited from discriminating based on pregnancy when it comes to any aspect of employment, including hiring, firing, pay, job assignments, promotions, layoffs, training, fringe benefits such as leave and health insurance, and other term or conditions of employment. That is what the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission has listed on their website when they're talking about the Pregnancy Discrimination Act. So once you're an employer with 15 or more employees, you as an employer must provide reasonable accommodations to a woman who is temporarily unable to perform her duties due to a medical condition that is related to pregnancy or childbirth, right? So such reasonable accommodations can include providing an alternative assignment, giving light duty, disability leave, or even unpaid pregnancy leave to pregnant employees if such accommodations are being provided temporarily to employees with disabilities. So there are some additional impairments related to pregnancy that are also covered by the Pregnancy Discrimination Act, and I encourage you to review that act and even the information on the EEOC's website so that you can become familiar with it. And again, don't say, hey, you're going to be working with an employment agency so you don't have nothing to worry about that, or you're just going to hire an HR person and they're going to do that. Guess what? It's your business. You still have to be overseeing what's happening in your business, especially if you are claiming you are the CEO. If you are the CEO, you still have to be involved in the operations of your business. It is yours. You created it for a reason. Don't lose it based on some complaint or a lawsuit that you could have prevented. So that is the Pregnancy Discrimination Act I really want to make sure I mention. And by the way, it is also illegal to harass a woman because of pregnancy, childbirth, or a medical condition related to pregnancy or childbirth. Yes, it's illegal. So the Family and Medical Leave Act also provides additional rights to pregnant employees. So add the FMLA to the list of employment laws with which you really need to become familiar with so that you can protect your business. Because again, we created our businesses for a reason. Let's make sure we equip ourselves with the knowledge that we need to continue having a successful business. So Pregnancy Discrimination Act, that's the first one I wanted to talk about. The second one I wanted to talk about today is the Equal Pay Act of 1963. So just like the name suggests, the Equal Pay Act prohibits employers from paying men and women different pay for the same or equal work. This relates to employees who perform similar job duties, under similar working conditions, and the jobs have the same requirements for skills, for effort, and for responsibility. So, okay, let's think about this. Just because job titles are different doesn't mean that the pay is supposed to be different if the employees are performing the same task. So, for instance, if you look at some titles such as housekeeper and janitor, you might have it that housekeepers are assigned to women. That's a title assigned to women. Janitor is a title assigned to men, right? Whatever, that's probably how you may have it, or you may have seen people already have it set up. But that doesn't mean because they have two different titles that you pay them differently, especially if the jobs require the same skills, the same effort, and responsibility, because then the pay should be equal. So take home message from this is that just because the titles are different doesn't mean the pay is supposed to be different if the job requires the same skill, effort, and responsibility. So if you have titles like director here, or head of department over here, or whatever, executive director, whatever is your leadership titles you're using, if you're, for whatever reason, using different titles for men and women, guess what? Their pay should be equal if the job requires the same skill, effort, and responsibility. So the Equal Pay Act focuses on the content of the job, not the job titles, right? That's what it focuses on, the content, not the job titles. So the jobs don't have to be exactly the same, but they do have to be substantially equal. So all employers should comply with the Equal Pay Act. And it doesn't matter the size of your company, doesn't matter if you're a private company or if you're a government or labor union, because I did mention some other laws earlier this week that relate to employers that have 15 or more employees. So when it comes to the Employment Equal Pay Act, actually, it doesn't matter the size of your business. You still have to adhere to the Equal Pay Act. And if an employer does realize, so if you're looking at your books and you're realizing, wait, hold on, I do have some pay differentials here between men and women in my business, and they're doing the same job that requires the same skill, effort, and responsibility, here's what you're not going to do. You're not going to reduce the wages of either party to equalize the pay. According to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, that's a no. You're not reducing their wages, right? So you hear me talk about this Equal Pay Act, right? And you might be wondering what exactly is included in this pay that the Equal Pay Act talks about. So are you ready for this? Because it's about 11 things that's included in pay. So the first thing is salary. Then we have overtime pay, bonuses, stock options, profit sharing and bonus plans, life insurance, vacation and holiday pay, cleaning or gasoline allowances, hotel accommodations, reimbursements for travel, and benefits. So when you're talking about pay, it's not just salary. It is everything else that goes into that. So I really encourage you to sit and look at how you're paying your employees, what is included in that pay, and you want to make sure that you are in compliance with the Equal Pay Act, especially if you have men and women performing the same job that require the same skill, effort, and responsibility. There are a list of 11 things. You can find this on the EEOC's website so that you can have it handy. So can you imagine, and I sure probably can because I've mentioned this throughout this whole video, that the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission is the commission responsible for enforcing the Pregnancy Discrimination Act and the Equal Pay Act. And also wanted to tell you this, it is also possible for an employee to file a complaint under one of these acts, the Pregnancy Discrimination Act or the Equal Pay Act, as well as under the Title VII for the Civil Rights Act and also under the Americans with Disabilities Act. So those are two ones that I talked about earlier this week. The Civil Rights one and the Americans with Disabilities Act. I talked about those acts earlier this week. And I also did a video on the importance of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, what their role is, what they're truly enforcing, and the suggestions that they have so that we can have successful businesses and free from discriminatory practices. Excuse me, sorry about that. So even if you are working with an employment agency, again, don't say it's their responsibility, it's your business. We work really hard to create our businesses, so let's protect them as best as we can. I'm not saying you have to know the ins and outs of all of these laws, but at least become familiar with them. So that way when you are working with the employment agency, when you do bring on the HR person, the consultant, or an actual direct employee, that you are familiar with these laws and how they impact your business and your employment practices. Protect your business. So thank you so very much for joining me. And remember, solutions plus actions equals results. I don't see any questions coming through here. So I'm Dr. Priscilla Kuser with Priscilla Kuser Consulting Solutions, and I really appreciate your support. Until next time, bye y'all.